FourBoysGarage back here. Today we're going to be starting on a project that we have the barn, the metal roofing. And this video is not going to be intended to be a know-all, tell-all video about metal roofing. There's tons of that out there. More really to cover some things that I can't find in other videos. Some little tricks that's going to help this become a little more DIY friendly for you DIYers out there. Maybe re-roofing your old barn, or maybe building your new pole barn and want to do the metal yourself. We're going to be doing a like a snap lock, snap rib, standing seam. One of the very first things I can tell you is don't store it on the ground like this. We put it on pallets to try to get off the ground a little, and it's just really not enough. We're trying to keep it covered, and the plastic is trapping moisture, so we're opening it up to let it breathe, let the metal dry. Hopefully start pulling some of these panels off and get them relocated. But if you're planning a project like this coming up, stick around. We're gonna cover a few things that we discovered or figured out. I've not seen it done this way anywhere else in some cases, so it's just going to be a much easier solution for us to be able to do this ourselves. So yeah, let's get into it. I think one major detail for us is going to be that we are not going to ice guard the entire roof. I've seen people do it that way. I'm not saying one way is right and one way is wrong. I have a hard time understanding why that'd be necessary, especially with like a snap block or like a standing seam. I mean, the roof itself is supposed to be nearly impenetrable in some cases. Snap block not as much, but some of the other standing seam options, and especially taller ribs and stuff we're using, is only 3/4. But we're doing a high quality Certainty diamond deck underlayment, the synthetic paper, and we've got the ice guard down low. It's for a barn, but it will be heated, so we're gonna run the ice guard down there. That's again only a 3/4 snap block standing seam or concealed fastener. Maybe what we should call it is a mostly concealed fastener, because some of the things we're going to use some exposed fasteners in very limited places, but we won't have a million screws and rubber washers in the roof, and that's what I'm after. Alright, so up here on the roof, and we've already got a few of the panels on. I went ahead and ran a second, kind of less expensive layer of synthetic paper over top. They recommend it on these dormers anyway. I think it was originally supposed to be below a 312, or I'm sorry, it was supposed to be a 312, and it's actually turned out to be more of like a 2.5, 2 3/4 12. So it's a low slope, and they showed basically doubling or overlapping by 50% the original paper, and the fellas that put this paper on for me did not do that. So on these dormers, I went ahead and doubled it up with like I said, another thin layer. And what I did was I didn't really staple it that much. They got cap nails on the, get that to focus a little bit. Yeah, cap nails on the paper. Got my my roof ladder here we made on this 712 pitch. It's a lot more comfortable to have something to prop yourself against. But in any case, I did this basically so there's not a lot of penetrations. I just ran some staples around the far outside perimeter here, just inside the trim in the sheathing. So I do have some staple penetrations there, but I figured between the paper, metal roofing, and then the rake trim, which will come over all of this, there's almost zero chance any water should get to that. But that all being said, the rake trim's job is to hold your metal down on the edge where there's no nailing flange. In this case, I started full on these dormers because I had that 14-inch cut over there that we already made, and it landed to where we were just on the midrib cutting the flange off. So basically 4 panels barely covers these dormers. 4 nice size pieces, 3 fulls, and then a good size cut, a 14-inch piece, which is only a few inches off. Well, 2 inches finished. 3 total with the nailing flange, but I didn't want to change the layout, and I will not be lining up top with my main roof panels. The main roof panels will go up, and there's, you know, about a 12-inch piece, I think, right there above the dormer at the ridge. And these will not line up, and I don't care. No one will ever see it. I went with what used my material the best here. 4 nice size pieces on these dormers. So what I've done in the meantime, and I've seen this on some of the other more, you know, true standing seam, never really seen it on the snap lock stuff, but I've taken some scrap. This is actually a midrib off of a piece that we were experimenting with, and actually it's the piece I've practiced my Malco ER3 on, and that's the bend. What I did is I've been cutting some strips off of it and actually bending again, because they fit really nice right there. I get a screw right there, and it holds this down really nice and tight. Already done a few down here. Loosen up this safety line cable. This is already installed. Pop a screw in there, nice and solid to hold this thing down until we get the rake trim on. And I'm not sure if I'm going to end up pulling these off or not. I kind of like the way it holds it nice and solid while we're maybe installing that rake trim, but I don't know. I guess if somebody out there knows if we should or we shouldn't. I guess it's one more, actually 2 cuts on each side, possibility of rusting underneath there, versus if we took them off and put the rake trim on. Not sure what to do. I like the way it holds it down solid though, for when we go put that trim on, so I'm leaning towards leaving them. But anyway, it's a good way to hold these in place until then, either way. Nothing is as satisfying as having one in place and peeling that plastic. And don't forget to peel the plastic. Man, that's satisfying. One more done. Don't forget your safety harness. This thing is pretty clunky. It was an inexpensive kit, like $100 at Home Depot from Warner. Warner? Yeah, Warner. Ladder brand. Anyway, it comes with everything: a rope, anchor point, harness. Even comes with some of the bolts to anchor this bad boy down. But dude, it's clunky. Maybe do yourself a favor and get a retractable one. I have 2 of them set up that pretty much covers me on this whole roof. I think they show you putting anchor points like 6 or 8 feet apart. And I don't know, I feel pretty comfortable from either one of these in about the middle of the roof. I guess if you went sliding, you might swing into the dormer. Maybe you'll be wishing you had another anchor point then, but I'm not really sweating it right now. It's not too bad. 7/12. It's not the worst. Alright, here's that cut edge. Kind of flushing out with our exterior trim. Better look at it, sorry. Trying to watch my footing. And then, of course, on this side, we just take one of these clips. I'm just bending it down a little bit. So whether I leave it or not, I don't want it touching the roof surface. A little bit beyond 90, holding it down really solid. and then put a screw in it right there. It holds down the cut side. So we've got the clips on the other side there, little guy. And then we've got these on this side. So it's a good way to secure them until you get your rake trim on, at least. All right, here's one of our panels up close. We only have about a 3/4 inch high rib, and that'd be the female leg there, but it's only about 3/4 high. And then this particular roofing has these kind of mid ribs, these striations in there to prevent the flat from, you know, oil canning and whatnot. And I don't mind it. I mean, there's probably some people who don't want this. It's on a barn that really no one's going to see. For me, I was really after the minimal to no penetrations through the actual roof itself, particularly in the area we're covering, which it's a 40 by 50 barn, and we've got a 712. I think that our main roof panels are 24'6" or something like that. But in any case, you know, about 24 by 50 on each side is, I don't know, was that 22, 24 square, somewhere in there? It's a lot of area, and will require, if it was ag metal, a ton of screws, a ton of washers, and we're gonna have a finished attic space above, and I just would prefer minimize the risk. So we've already got a few full panels up on the roof, and we'll probably get some video of covering some of the basics of installing this, just for anybody who may have not seen or watched anything about this before. But we have to get a piece from about 14 on this female leg, and it puts us pretty much, well, what I should say, 14 puts us pretty much right here, but we have to cut a little longer. And in this case, I've been trying to cut about 5/8 longer, and that's going to put us right here on this edge of this sort of mid rib. And we've already cut one, and we'll go to that one now. This is what we're cutting with. Super handy. The DeWalt 20-volt cordless shear. We did the tool only because we're already on the DeWalt platform. I think this thing was like 200 bucks by itself, no battery, but it's a lifesaver. Just gotta watch as it coils up. It kind of wants to scratch your metal, so you just gotta have either somebody helping you sort of manage that thing, or be careful with it. And you can see the corner of that rib we cut off. What we end up deciding to do was ride right on the edge of it, and actually cut the corner off. So we rode the tool. Let's see if I can get in here a little bit better. We rode the tool right on the edge, cutting right there. So we actually clipped the corner of this rib off to keep it as long as possible. So we'll get about a 1/2 inch bend up, and that'll be fine, because really all it's going to be doing is for the rake trim. I got a piece on the horses here. This part will turn down over it and come down to the actual flat of the panel, and our bend up will be in behind here. Actually, it'll probably be somewhere in here, but it really is just to prevent any water that may get under here from going anywhere. All it will do is hit our bend up and be forced out the end of the roof, and should keep you dry. Force it down to the eave. So, and this is the rake trim for this stuff, by the way. They didn't do the best job cutting it when they were fabbing it, clearly, but nonetheless, should do the job. This is the tool we'll be using to make our bends. You're like limitless on the length, because it just uses a series of rollers to actually gradually bend, so you can go as long as you want. We've already put a bend. We practiced on our 25-foot panels. We cut one with the known dimensions so that we could practice on the cut side before we really started making bends that were gonna matter, but it's a Malco ER3. And you really wanna make your cuts as straight as you can because it rides against your cut on these rollers. And the straighter you are with your cut, the straighter it will be on this series of rollers as you go. And then of course, these are the rollers that are actually performing the bending. And it's adjustable by this set screw. You gotta loosen all three of these. But this middle one particularly, and it's got a scale on it. You know, to make it the bend up, whatever you want it to be. In our case, we're gonna have to adjust it for this specific panel. One of the things we're doing to make it easier on these bends and the cuts is using this frame that we actually miscalculated. We're 2 panels short. Bad math. And this was the packaging they used, but it makes a great frame. We threw it on some horses. It makes a nice support for the panels. And we just clamp it to hold it in position while we do our bend. With this thing, you just keep standing it up a little by little. You want to be real careful about not bending too far and getting these rollers down on your panel. Even though for me, they'll cover. But I don't need them at a perfect 90 anyway, so I'm not worried about it. I'm not going to do it. I don't want it to rust. Anyway, you can kind of take your hand hem tool or hand brake and kind of clean it up a little bit and turn it to a full 90 if you need to. Basically, you can make a bend as long as you want. All right, the clip we have of the panel when it's flat was no good, so we're going to kind of show from flat how it works. And you just kind of, you don't want to have too much. You don't want to be too aggressive with how you're coming in. You need to just a little bit, and you can see it probably in the reflection. It's already started a small crease, and if you've ever worked with metal, you'll know once you get even a slight crease in metal, it already wants to bend there. You can kind of see how this thing rolls right along the cut edge. We can go ahead and go all the way to the end of the panel. Just to show that I hit a bad spot in my cut. I got off a little bit and want to bind up there. Once you get that, it's just a matter of rolling again and again until you get it turned up as high as you want. Probably one important detail about using this if you decide to buy one, and these things are not cheap. It's like 450 bucks. But for me, buying a tool even this expensive to save the money I am on this roof is well worth it. I'm putting the short roller up top. I'm pretty sure that's the way it's intended. It helps as you bend over and get to your 90. It gives you a little bit more clearance, and it also keeps this on the metal right there at the crease too. It's, you know, if you can imagine your crease being right in there, nestled in that corner. So I think it's an important detail when you go to use this tool. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. This is a tool that is like a hand breaker for hemming, making bends. Pretty sure this one is specifically for like duct work and stuff, but I've been using it just to kind of touch up on some places where I really want to get my bend a little bit harder. And this is an inch deep. I'm not making in 1 inch bend. It also has I think it's like about a 1/4 inch But you know, for me, I just kind of get it down there real close. Straighten up my bend, get it where I want it to be. I think the important thing here is this stuff's not very hard, and I think it's important not to be intimidated by it. I was a little, thinking that it was too big or too hard of a project to take on, and I decided to pull the trigger on some of these tools like that bender and the shear. You know, between the two, you know, $700 at least in tools. But the quote I got was about 20 grand in labor for this roof, so I can buy a couple tools. All right, so once you have your bend up, like in our case, our bend up will be almost flush with our exterior trim. We're using the LP Smart Side trim. But if you're just gonna wrap your stuff with aluminum, you might just be flush to your sub fascia or your framing. And with that bend up, your rake trim will come in and reach in something like that. And it'll create a place where water is not allowed to get beyond. Another thing that I want to make sure to get out there that's helpful is, you know, your layout. If you're going to have roof vent pipes, chimney for a stove or something like that, in my case I have dormers, so I wanted to lay out, and you don't want things to land on these ribs. You need to avoid it, really. But one of the things for this is that, you know, you can go along and sort of lay out your roof, and in this case these are 16-inch ribs. They lay out just like framing, so you can pull your tape 16, 32, 48, and so on, and really know right where your ribs are going to land without doing a bunch of math. That's super handy. So we're having to cut right along the edge of this mid rib, and so I've been trying to just kind of ride this guy, this one edge right there. It's not easy. These things are designed more for cutting flat metal, but we're going to try to do our best here on camera. It's important to cut your metal with a tool like this because, number one, it makes a nice clean cut, but the really important part is it doesn't heat it up. So resist using a grinder or some type of other abrasive type cutting. What that'll do is make it rust fast.